pull up a chair because episodes 1 to 10 of Pursuit of Jade surprised me. You see, when this story began, I thought I was watching a tale about survival, about a young woman trying to keep herself and her younger sister alive after losing their parents. A wounded stranger buried in the snow, a mystery waiting to unfold. And while all of these things are true, by episode 10, it becomes clear that the Pursuit of Jade is aiming for something much bigger. Because beneath the mystery, the romance and the politics, this story is really about power, responsibility, trust, and the invisible rules that govern people's lives. And I think that's why these first 10 episodes work so well. One of the biggest changes across episodes 1 to 10 is Changyu's world. When we first meet Changyu, our concerns are simple. Feed our sister, keep a roof over their heads, protect what remains of our family. Our world is small because it has to be. Survivor leaves very little room for anything else. But gradually, that changes. Through our encounter with Changyu, Changyu finds herself becoming involved in matters far beyond our original concerns. And what I love is that the show doesn't rush this transformation. It happens naturally. One decision leads to another. One responsibility creates another. And before she realizes it, Changyu is influencing events rather than simply reacting to them. And that for me is the most important development of the first 10 episodes. So she's no longer simply surviving. She is beginning to shape her own destiny. If Changyu's journey is about expansion, then Changju's journey is about revelation. Remember, when we first met him, he's little more than a mystery. A wounded stranger, a man hiding secrets, a man clearly running from something. But as the episodes progress, we begin to understand that Changyu is constantly assessing the people and situations around him. He's observing, calculating, adapting. And what makes him interesting is that the show never gives us all the answers at once. Every episode reveals another layer. And the more we learn, the more obvious it becomes that his presence in Changyu's life is going to change everything. The question isn't whether Changyu is important. The question is just how important he really is. And one thing that became increasingly clear to me throughout this episode is that there is an invincible force shaping almost every conflict. That's the Dayin Code. Whether characters mention it directly or not, it's sort of influenced everything. Its influence is everywhere. You can see it determines status, it determines expectations, it determines who has power and who does not. It shapes relationships, it shapes opportunities, and it shapes all the consequences as well. The more I watched, the more I realized that many of the characters aren't simply fighting each other. They are fighting the systems and expectations that surround them. And I think understanding the Dayin Code is essential to understanding Pursuit of Jade itself. It's one of the reasons I'm planning a separate deep dive video on the subject. So I'm going to be talking about that in another video. At the beginning of the story, survival is the most valuable thing. Food matters, money matters, shelter matters. But by episode 10, something else is becoming even more important, and that is trust. Who can Fan Qingyu trust? Who can Xie Zheng trust? Who is loyal? Who is pretending? Who has hidden motives? Some of the most compelling moments in this episode aren't the action scenes, but they are the moments where the characters decide whether another person deserves their trust. Because trust, once given, changes everything. And once broken, it can be almost impossible to repair. What continues to impress me most about Fan Qingyu is that she never waits for somebody else to solve her problems. Now, that doesn't mean she refuses help. Far from it. What it means is she values community. She values friendship. She appreciates support. But responsibility is her default setting. Whenever a problem appears, our first instinct is, our first instinct isn't who will help me. It's what needs to be done. And you see, that mindset is consistent throughout these first 10 episodes. And I think it's one of the reasons so many viewers have connected with her. She feels capable without feeling perfect. I don't know if you get what I mean. Like, she can do so many things, but she knows she doesn't have to be perfect. Strong without feeling invincible. She's practical without losing her compassion. And that's not easy to write. And it's even harder to perform. Which is why Tian Xinwei deserves so much credit for bringing this character to life. Something else worth highlighting is the world building. Lian doesn't feel like a backdrop. It feels like a real place. The marketplace, the homes, the academy, the officials, the merchants, the villagers. Everyone seems to be living their own lives beyond the immediate plot. And that matters. It matters because when a world feels alive, the stakes feel real. And then the actions, then seems to have consequences. The decisions from then have, they've got they ripple outward. And then that makes the story becomes more immersive as a result. It doesn't feel like a show. It feels like a real life that you are just watching. The biggest surprise for me wasn't a plot twist. It was how quickly the show expanded its scope. So what began as a relatively intimate story has steadily introduced larger questions. Questions about hierarchy, duty, questions around justice, around power, and also around the obligations people owe to one another. By episode 10, it's clear that this story isn't content to remain small. And that's exciting because it suggests the best may still be ahead of us. If I had to summarize the first 10 episodes in one word, it would be responsibility. Fan Qingyu carries responsibility. Xie Zheng carries responsibility. The Xiao family carries responsibility. Even the Dayin Code is built around ideas of duty and obligation. The real question isn't whether responsibility exists. The question is, who carries it honorably and who uses it as an excuse of power. For me, that's the central tension running through these episodes. Now to the review room verdict. Episodes 1 to 10 successfully achieve exactly what a first act should. They introduce compelling characters, they build a believable world, and they leave us wanting for more. They have established meaningful themes, and you just want more of, what you've seen. However, most importantly, they transform what initially appears to be a simple survival story into something much richer. A story about trust, duty, power, responsibility, and the choices people make when those forces collide. My verdict? An excellent opening act that steadily gains confidence with each episode. And if the next 10 episodes build on these foundations, we are in for something special. The room has spoken.